Welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia Baranovsky-Schneider, the podcast that takes you on a journey around the world to meet some of the most inspiring and accomplished individuals. Discover their stories, uncover invaluable business lessons from their paths to success, and gain exclusive insights on how to apply their strategies to elevate your life and business.
Hello, and welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia. I'm your host, Patty Baranowski-Schneider. Today, I'm joined by Simran Sahoo, teen author of Good But Not Good Enough. So welcome, Simran. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a current freshman at Princeton studying economics, and I wrote this book about 2 years ago, and it profiles the stories of different women who underwent gender inequality in the workplace, and I was able to interview with them and interpose secondary research that helped me come up with proposed policy actions or just actions in general that we can kind of perform as a society to reduce gender inequality in the workplace.
Now, what inspired you as a high school student to take on such a huge and important topic like workplace gender inequality, and how'd that lead to writing your book, Good But Not Good Enough?
Yeah, so it all started when I was in 8th grade, and I was participating in my school's speech and debate contest. And so the event that I was participating in required me to write a 10-minute speech on any topic that I wanted, memorize it, and then give it to a panel of judges and students. And I was really interested in workplace gender inequality, so I sat down, I created this entire research portfolio of facts and statistics about gender inequality, and all of them were incredibly negative. The testimonials that I'd gathered were not the most inspiring, and so halfway through the speech, I was presenting all these reasons why we would never be successful in the workforce, and I had all of this evidence why, and I thought I was really confident with what I was saying when my coach, she stopped me halfway through, and she was like, Simran, how do you see yourself becoming a part of the solution when you're just inherently right now being a part of the problem? You're just saying that we're never going to be successful. And that made me realize what I was doing. At age 13, I was spouting all of these statistics why we would never be successful. And I genuinely believed that gender inequality was not something that we could overturn. It was not something that was solvable. And over the next few years, I continued to speak to a lot of women around my area and then eventually across the country and even the world. And they were just through different projects that I was doing. And it wasn't necessarily that I was searching for stories of, them overcoming gender inequality or experiences that they had with it. But it just felt like a lot of these women had problems because of their gender. And a lot of them were, like I said before, sad and discouraging and had a lot of those statistics that I was talking about. But every single woman ended that story with a way that she was contributing to society now in terms of improving it. And a lot of the women that I spoke to were hosting panels for little girls, like me, and encouraging them and seeing them what they could do with their life. And a lot of women were mentoring men and teaching them how to actually be, good people in the economy. And a lot of women were even going through their own mentorship workshops and teaching themselves about how to use their inner voices and stand up when some other people were saying, bad things about them or discouraging them. And I left those conversations feeling very enlightened and also realizing that, yes, gender inequality exists. Yes, there's a lot of discouragement out there, but we do have the potential to kind of overturn that. And so around when I was 16 years old, I sat down with all of these stories that I had collected, and I decided that it was time for other girls to also listen to them. And so I started writing them, I compiled them, and I also used my own personal experiences with, being a girl and being interested in a lot of STEM disciplines. And I was able to combine all those experiences together and write a book that, I'm really proud of.
That's amazing. I mean, you definitely are passionate about it. There's no two ways about it. But now you interviewed many incredible women for the book. So what was one story that stayed with you the most, and why did it stay with you?
Mm-hmm. So one of the women that I talked to, she recounted this experience that she had her boss where she was asking for maternity leave, and her boss said, "Oh, this is why I don't like hiring women. They just go off and have babies." And that quote really stood out to me, and it's stuck with me today because this woman put a lot of effort into her work. And the fact that paid maternity leave or maternity leave in general is still not mandated in the United States, and national childcare is still not free, is one of the biggest reasons why women have continued to fall behind men in terms of the workplace like hierarchy. And a lot of people won't hire women for more like higher managerial positions just because they know that pregnancy and maternity leave is something that might come up in the future. And so I think just the idea that mothers, there's like this like stigma these days that women and mothers should be the primary caretaker. And so that's why a lot of men won't even ask for paternity leave, because they're afraid that it might, hinder their career advancement, or other people might look at them and say, wait, that's like a woman's job. And so a lot of women will actually, they won't ever be able to enter the workforce again the same after they take off maternity leave, just because they're like already behind. And also now they have a child to raise. So some of them might go to part-time, or some of them might not return to the workforce at all. And a lot of the women that woman that I spoke to who did enter the workforce, after having a kid, felt really guilty because she was both a mother and also an employee. And so for her work had to come first. And so she wasn't able to spend as much time with her children or her kids. And that made her feel really bad, because she felt like she was missing out on a lot of her child's first steps. But her employer wasn't, the most kindest to her about that particular fact. And so I thought that was really interesting, because I think like motherhood, it's such a beautiful thing, yet in the work environment, it can become very sad and something that's even, it feels like an obstacle that you have to overcome, even though it's something so beautiful. And I think that's really stuck with me today, because we as a country need to ensure that paid maternity leave is mandated. We need to have programs that help mothers go back to where, like the same level that they were before they came, and not feel like they're behind, and also encourage them to feel like they still have connections with their children, because it should be flexible. It should be around the kids and not just work. And there needs to be a less stigmatized notion that women should be the caretakers, that men can't also contribute and take care of the family.
It's crazy, because I've been doing this for 35 years and it's come a long way, but it still has a long way to go. But back when I was, I was a single mom of 2 kids, and it was the same. When I was pregnant with my second child, I was at a new job, and the marketing world was a predominantly male industry. So there was no maternity plan at all. They realized that they had to create one. So there were some women working there, but they never had one. So they researched other companies, and basically you get 4 weeks off. And I'm like, 4 weeks. Okay. So now I was sick as I was, I couldn't take any sick days. I'm trying to save that to prolong it, because I couldn't even try to get my poor baby into like a babysitter until at least 6 to 8 weeks. And then I get told, oh, you can't carry over your sick time, use it or lose it. And I'm like, you can't give me the 2. I'm like, this is insane. So, and then when I had the baby again, people have no idea what it was like, because they didn't have kids there. So it's like, if there was snow on the ground, nobody cared. I would have to pick up the baby by 6 p.m. from the babysitter. My work's still not done. I would have to leave, pick up the baby, run back to work, stay there till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And it's insane. And nobody cared at the office. It was like, that's your problem. You want to have kids, that's on you, but the job has to get done. And it's come a long way, but it still definitely has a long way to go.
Yeah.
Now tell us, as a young woman preparing to enter the workplace in the future, how have these stories shaped the way that you view your own career path, and what do you want to fight for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so something like that you just talked about, which is progress. I think a lot of people have told me oh, gender inequality, it doesn't really exist, because look how far we've come, right? Because in the 1950s and the 1900s, we were in rock bottom. But I think through these conversations and through a lot of the my first 2 chapters in my book were actually paying homage and respect to a lot of the female trailblazers that we had before the 1950s, who were able to help us, now vote or speak on podcasts and write and do all of these things. But I think at least for me, I'm interested in something that's more finance, which is a very male dominated industry. And I think obviously I recognize that what our finance fields look like a couple of years ago or even like centuries ago is so different from what it is now. And obviously I'm very thankful that I have a lot of female like mentors to look up to who have broken into the finance industry, but also like I recognize that there's so much left to do in terms of that, and that clubs and also like girls into venture capitalism and just and essentially like trying to bring together more like female faces and representation and something that's very like male dominated. And then also I still have like this very big interest in gender economic policy and like gender economics research, and a lot of the conversations that I've had with these women have made me realize just how many policy changes that we need to make in our country, regardless of how much progress we have made. Like there is still so much more that we can do in terms of like policy. Like one of the things that like really stands out to me is the fact that a lot of employers can still use like previous compensation as an ability as like a factor in deciding their current salary. And so one of the women that I spoke to, she was in a very like female dominated industry before she moved to her like current job, and because she was in a very female dominated industry which has, you know, less of a salary than more like male dominated industries, the salary that she was receiving was much less than her male counterparts, even though they were doing essentially the same job. And there is a salary like gap act that is still in Congress that hasn't passed yet, which should be passed, because employers shouldn't be able to look at past compensation, which has all of these different factors of like embedded, you know, wage gap inequality, and make current decisions about their future.
You know, it's ironic, like when you're trying to apply for a job and things, it's just amazing that half the questions that they ask, like, you know, you can see the name or whatnot, but everything else should just be hidden. Just look at the qualifications. Like, why are you even asking, am I male, female, other? It shouldn't even matter. Am I qualified to do the job? Can I do it? Everything else, you know, half of these questions, it really makes no sense. But I guess they just have to check off boxes to meet certain quota. How many women do we have? How many, you know, which is a shame. It should be the quality of what you can give, you know, for a job, and that's it. Now tell me, what challenge did you face as a teenager writing and publishing a book on such a complex and often controversial topic, and how'd you overcome the challenges?
Mm-hmm. So when I was writing this book, I was 16, going into 17, and a common question that I like received was, why are you writing a book about gender inequality in the workplace when you haven't really entered the workplace yet? And I think that question was the exact question that I was trying to like break down in my book, because a lot of people think gender inequality only affects the women who are currently in the workplace. But as people who are avid consumers of like social media, who have direct access to a lot of adults in our life, and who are like watching a lot of inequality happen right in front of our eyes, we never really talk about how workplace gender inequality affects people who are going to enter the workplace in a couple of years. And so I had a lot of people not really take my question seriously, or not really take our conversation seriously, just because they thought like, you know, what are you going to really do for us at age 16? Like, you don't really know what it's like. And I think like the thing is, like, when you're young, a lot of people don't take your ideas as seriously, but when you're young, you also have, I would say, like, even like bigger dreams. And I think the reason why a lot of people grow up and don't have as big dreams is because older people or other people kind of knocked your dreams down when you were younger. And I think just the way that I try to combat this was ask each woman that I spoke to, or each adult that I spoke to, what was your dream when you were younger? And do you feel like you fulfilled it? And every single one of those women or adults told me that they had this like really big dream when they were younger. And that dream has shifted, but that dream has shifted to help other people more. And so like I remember like I spoke to this like woman who really wanted to be a ballerina, and she's not a ballerina, she's in the government now, and she like was telling me like, now I want to help other little girls fulfill their dreams no matter what it might be. And those conversations really uplifted me, because when I told her like one of my dreams is to, you know, help little girls fulfill their dreams and help people realize that they can fulfill their dreams. She was like, let me promote your book for you. Let me sit down and, tap into my network. Let me help you. And I realized that, yeah, there are like people out there who aren't maybe taking my dreams seriously, but there's definitely people who are taking a chance on me and, sitting down with me and sharing their stories and also helping me share my own.
That's awesome. That's why they always say connect with other people, because you never know who knows somebody and who's, there are some good apples out there. They're few and far between these days, but they do give you a little faith in humanity. And it is true with them, as a kid, because if you have an aspiration to do something, like even back then, I didn't aspire to be a marketing person. It was just a job I had out of high school. But if I would have said, okay, this is what I want to be when I grow up, I would have already known it's a male-dominated industry. I'm going to have to work 100 times harder than everybody else, blah, blah, blah. So that might have even deterred me. Or in my head, it's not that I could learn everything I can and do good at my job. It's that I have to do better than everybody else because I won't be seen as equal. So it is true that as a young age, you do need to know this stuff, even before the workforce, because you need to know what you're up against before you even get there. Because if I just would have went to school, learned how to do this, and went and got a job and realized I'm never going anywhere here, that's something I probably would have wanted to know beforehand. Maybe I would have went in a different direction. So even if you're not in the workforce at that point, it is something that I think people need to be aware of. And, as much as people say, oh, it's got a long way to go, that's one thing I'll say with this generation. They're all about making change. I might not like some of it, but they definitely have a voice and they're going to be heard. And that's not a bad thing. So now you mentioned that your book aims to bridge a gap between generations. So what lessons do you think younger generations like Gen Z can learn from the struggles of women before them? And what do you think older generations can learn from women like you?
I think like my book was definitely like this medium between like a younger and older generation. And a lot of the conversations that I had with adults made me feel like I was on equal ground with them. And so something that I feel like the adults could learn from like us is that a lot of us aren't really having access to conversations that make us realize that joining the workforce or doing certain things is possible. Because like I said earlier, like we are consuming media that seems like it's all or nothing. Like a lot of like I'll see like on TikTok like all of these like horrible stories about the way women are mistreated, or that there's not a lot of like representation of women in STEM fields. So a lot of us don't really have mentors in those aspects. And so I think like something that more like industry professionals could do is host more like events for specifically high school students. Like now in college, we have all of these like networking events, but I know in high school, especially since like no one really knows what they want to do, they'll just listen to like all of these like discouraging statistics and think like, okay, I'm definitely not doing that. But I think if we actually had conversations with women who are like, oh, like it is hard and you will have to go through a lot of things, but at the end of the day, like it's so rewarding. And if you truly do love maybe like STEM or like space or like finance, like you will find a job that you will really love. But it might come with some challenges, but you can do it because I've done it. And like just making those connections, I think would encourage a lot more people to really go after their dreams. And I think something that we could definitely learn from like adults is that we do have the power to keep fighting, that our dreams can be fulfilled, and that we do have the courage. Like one of the people that I interviewed, she reported physical harassment and then she was fired from her job. And she was telling me like how horrible she felt after like those couple of years, because she felt like every time that someone mistreated her, she couldn't speak up because that was the consequence that she would face. And she said something to me, which was, we like teach other people how we want to be treated. And she told me like after years of like therapy and sitting down with herself and, figuring out what her values were and where those values were being influenced from, and, meetings with different like industry professionals and people who were older than her who had gone through similar things, she finally realized that her like self was not something that she was going to sacrifice. Like her inner courage was not something she was going to sacrifice. And I think that like she's doing so many amazing things now. She's also an author. She's written a book about her own experiences, and she's definitely become someone that I really look up to and I'm constantly inspired by. And I'm always, like really interested to see what she's doing, even though she's so much older than me. And I think just like having that story and just learning from her has made me realize that, like, again, like, they're kind of like interconnected. I probably will face some, really scary things in my life, but I can bounce back from them because there's people out there who have done it before. And I also know that I won't have to do it alone because I have all of these connections now who can help me if something like that does happen in the future.
Right. It's funny because back in my day, mentorship wasn't a thing. And it's actually, I was looking for this book because I did another podcast with a woman, Deborah Heiser. She wrote a book, The Mentor's Edge, and she actually has programs out there for mentorship. Because like, even with me, back in my day, you just had to figure it out on your own because nobody was willing to help you. And I've had people contact me, like younger generations, about what I do. And I remember one girl did a college thesis on, because she wanted to get into this space and I was willing to help her. And I tell her, you want me to tell you, you want to hear, or you want me to tell you how it is? I'm just going to tell you how it is. And you decide if that's the right field you want to be in. And they loved it because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and you decide if that's really what you want to do. So I'm glad now that people are opening up and talking to people. And you're right, they don't do that in high schools at all. You have your curriculum, go there, do your work, and that's it. And then at the end of the day, you get a diploma and you're set to just go take on the world. What did you learn? It was kind of like, reminds me of when I just had this conversation with someone when I got my driver's license. You take your driving classes and it teaches you how to park, how to stop at a stop sign and turn. First time I get on the road, I'm like, oh my God, I've never driven in traffic before, like literally driven in traffic. I remember going through the tunnel years ago. I drove down the middle because I'm like, oh my God, like this is the same with school. They're teaching you the basics, but you're not teaching me how to get a job, how to function in society, how to deal with other people, all the intricacies of a job. So they should have a lot more of that, little engagements, and not just to come to the high school and lecture me. Talk to me. Let me talk to you about what it is and have various things. So I'm with you on that one. Now tell us, one unique aspect of your mission is inviting men into the conversation around gender inequality. So why do you think it's important for men to be a part of the dialogue, and how can they best support this cause?
Mm-hmm. So I think like recently there's been this like stigma. Again, like I was talking about earlier, like a lot of men don't feel like they can be the caretaker of their families, but also like I said earlier, like a lot of people think gender inequality only affects women, but really affects everyone. And so like if we have women being like this more like sensitive, dependent type of people, then men have to take on the responsibility of being like the primary breadwinners. And so they don't have the opportunity to be as, they don't have the opportunity to show their emotions. A lot of, just like my experience with my male classmates when I was younger, even at such a young age, they were honestly already taking on this responsibility of, not really showing their feelings or their emotions. And they had to be strong and confident and assertive and aggressive 24/7. And if they showed emotions that were more like feminine, then they were made fun of for like being like a girl. And the thing is like, it is like honestly really sad to see because we're kind of like teaching our children to become this way just because like no child just automatically like grows into this, man who hates women and doesn't want them to be successful in their life. It's just a culmination of the experiences and the people that have taught them and cultivated them to be that way, right? And so I think from a young age, what needs to happen is we teach boys and men and mentor them to show them, just because other men and older men are acting a certain way doesn't mean that you have to follow in their footsteps. That's why gender inequality has continued to be perpetuated through generation after generation. It's because we are just inherently teaching the next generation how to continue on with this craft, when in reality, we need to stop it from a very young age and teach them, let's actually be innovators. Let's stop gender inequality now. You can be like a woman and cry. You don't have to be the primary breadwinner of your family. You can take care of your children. And I think the first thing that every person needs to do is just sit down and realize that they have a lot of privilege. A lot of men have the privilege of, just being men and being regarded as automatically the more confident or like assertive person, even if that's not inherently true. And so once they realize that they have that privilege, then they can start advocating for themselves too and realize that gender inequality, its termination will also and allow them to be more free and allow them to pursue what they really want to do.
No, I agree. I mean, the stigma's still there. It's a slow process. Like one of the TV shows I watch, I was actually surprised because he was the stay-at-home mom, she was the worker, and there's a commercial that's out there. I can't remember what the commercial's about, but he's the stay-at-home dad, and so little by little they're starting to make it normal. Because it should be whoever can make the most money, great. It doesn't matter who you are, and you both love your kid. It's just, like I said, it's a slow process. I'm glad that it's starting to get noticed, but it's still got a long way to go. So now one awesome thing, all proceeds from your book are donated to Care for Children City, supporting girls' education in underdeveloped countries. Why is it important for you to connect your project to a cause like that?
So, in my opinion, I think like education is probably the most important like factor in terms of like childhood development. And if a girl or just anyone doesn't have access to education in, their early childhood, that kind of forces them to become dependent on other people or external factors and doesn't really allow them to be empowered and, remain independent in their life. And so inherently like fulfill whatever they want to do. And so I'm like a firm believer that every human being doesn't necessarily have the opportunity to become the person that they want to be, but rather they become, the person that society kind of forces them to be because they don't have the resources to become the people that they want to be. And so for me, like when I was researching different charities, and because I knew that I personally didn't need the proceeds and I wanted my book to be bigger than me and, actually like create a movement and help people. And especially since I saw like a lot of my classmates and a lot of my friends and a lot of my community support me and start buying the book, I was like, okay, well, I have all of these like sales. I want to actually do something with them. And so I was researching a lot of charities, and this charity really stood out to me because it started with my hometown in India, and it's an organization that is able to build schools and like education and the curriculum for specifically girls who don't have access to education. And after I donated a lot of that money to them, I got a letter from one of the girls addressed to me, and they had them like write letters to like some primary donors, which like one of them was me. And she like told me, she was like, I really wanted to become a musician and I never had like the opportunity to like, actually pursue my music. And now I can read and now I can write. And like, she wrote that letter in English, and it was just so like, it was so fulfilling to me because I was like, obviously like I can't take credit for the education system that they're building there, but the fact that my funds was able to, help her like actually fulfill her dreams. And now she's, maybe going to be able to study music when she's older, and she knows how to read and write and like share her craft with people. I thought that was just so beautiful, and it just made me so happy. And yeah.
I mean, that's awesome because it's, you can, like I've written books, but not more mine was like things that I've gone through that I wanted other people to know that they weren't alone, blah, blah, blah. So you want to have a purpose. Some people just write just for fun, but your purpose is to entertain people, and you have a purpose to try to help people, try to, create a movement, get people to understand. But at the same time, you're giving back, which I think is amazing. And, hopefully you're inspiring these young girls now to, continue your legacy at some point. So now, as someone who's passionate about storytelling and writing, what advice would you give to other young people who want to use creative media, like whether books, blogs, podcasts, or raise awareness about social issues?
I think the main advice I would give them is that they can do it. I think just like in general, a lot of people think that young people can't possibly take on and actually execute a project like this. But the thing is, like, you don't ever have to do it alone. I had the support of an editing team and my parents and my family and my friends, and I was able to, show them my drafts. And it was something that I was so passionate about, and everyone around me recognized it, and they wanted to uplift me and encourage me to keep on, doing it. And I've actually had conversations with some people in my community who are interested in, also writing their own books. And some of them are fiction, some of them are nonfiction. And I'm, talked to this girl who wants to create her own podcast. And I've just been able to really realize that, like, there's so many people out there who have, their own individual concerns that they have with society that they want to address. For me, it was gender inequality in the workplace, but there's personal issues that some people have, faced that they want to like really like share with the world and share solutions to the world. And so I would just tell them like, you can do it. And if you feel alone, just know that there's people out there who would be so excited with what you're trying to do and what you're trying to fulfill, and give you their resources and connections and, encouragement. And that you can also like reach out to me. And if you have any questions, like I would be more than happy to support you through that journey as well. Because I think that like the best way to solve a problem sometimes is through creative mediums, is through sharing stories and getting to know other people's stories and sharing them. Because I think like one of the biggest like pieces of advice someone gave me was that you pass by so many people every single day. Every single person has an amazing story that they just maybe haven't had the opportunity to share yet. And things like books and podcasts and different creative mediums are the way to give each person a voice, and also for you to share your voice with people as well.
That's amazing. And I do love that too, where you help and give back, because I'm the same way. I'm like, tell me what you need. I'm happy to help, where other people are just like, no, it's my story. I'm not sharing, or competition. I'm not, we're all in, it's one big world. We're all here to help one another. So everybody contact her. She's going to help. So now tell me, looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future, both for yourself in terms of studying economics and continuing your advocacy, and for the broader fight for gender equality in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. So something that I've been really interested in is specifically like in India, there's a lot of women who become pregnant at a very young age, or who are forced to like marry at a very young age. And there's been some improvement with that. But I think just the idea that a lot of women there are forced to become mothers at a very early age, and it's not necessarily their own decision. And so because of that, they don't have access to as much education. They don't have access to as much exposure to what they might really want to do in their life. And a lot of them have to leave behind their childhoods just to raise, a family. And I think something that I really want to do is go back to my hometown, Orissa, and interview the older generation of women there in our mother tongue, specifically since like a lot of people don't really know Oriya as much these days, because they're like, switching to Hindi, which is like the more like popular Indian language. And I want to be able to write down their stories in their mother tongue and just understand, what kind of happened with their childhoods, just so I can create more exposure to the fact that, yes, like maybe in America, that sort of like stigma that women should become mothers at a very early age, or that they should create a traditional family, is gone, but it's still not completely evaporated in more like underdeveloped countries or developing countries. And I think that perhaps that could be another book, or just like for my own sake, like just like understanding their stories and like researching. And I think that's definitely something that I want to pursue.
It's awesome, because it is true. You talk to people, you might learn a lot more that you didn't even know was going on, and maybe your advocacy will be like a global outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if there's one message that you hope readers and listeners of the podcast take away from Good But Not Good Enough, what would that be?
Honestly, my title that I chose when I was like 16 years old, it was Good But Not Good Enough, because I wanted people to realize that, yes, we've come so far, and a lot of these stories, they have like really good things that come out of it. And, we can fulfill our dreams, and that's good, but that is truly not good enough. We have come so far as a society, and I feel like my book has definitely given me the opportunity to connect with a lot of people and create meaningful change. But it's still not enough, and there's still so many more things that we can do to really help people. And I think also, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be with gender inequality that you want to make a meaningful impact on. There are so many problems out there that, again, there is so much progress attached to. We have come so far with so many different things, but they haven't reached the ultimate level yet. And maybe they never will be. But I think each person, if they have such a dream, or if they have any inclination to, doing things with advocacy, or doing things with writing, or just storytelling in general, they should do it, because you never know what sort of levels you'll reach. You'll never know what sort of people you'll meet, and you'll never know like how you as a person will change. So our lives are honestly good, but not good enough. And there's so much more that we can do with our life.
You're 100% right. I always say we're all a work in progress, but we got to get it moving a little quicker. But so anything else you want to talk about that we didn't already cover?
You can reach me at my socials. So all of my socials are just SimranSahoo. And on my LinkedIn, I feature like a lot of the different podcasts or just things that I've been able to do with my book. And I think just like I truly like am really proud of my work. It's been 2 years since I actually wrote it, but I will never stop promoting it and never stop advocating for it, just because it has allowed me to meet so many different people. And it truly has been, like I said earlier, a medium for me to be able to connect with a different generation. And I hope that if you feel like even a little bit inspired or feel compelled to do something similar, that you will reach out to me, because I'm always ready to help younger people out in terms of like achieving a similar project.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you again for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the channel, and be sure to click the bell notification to see new episodes. So thank you again.
Thank you for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia, talking with some of the most brilliant minds on their journey to success and their recommended strategies. Please leave your feedback and visit pristineadvisors.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Feel free to let me know your thoughts, suggestions, and anything else you'd like me to cover. Together, we can make success happen for all.